You've probably seen it happen. Someone holds a newborn. They look down into those pale, cloudy eyes, and they say, "Oh, she has blue eyes." And the room nods. It feels like a settled fact. Blue eyes. Written at birth. Something the baby arrived with, like the shape of her nose or the curve of her chin. But if you visit again in 3 months, those eyes might look different. A little darker around the edges. A slight warmth creeping in where everything was once cool and gray. Come back again in 6 months, and the blue might be gone entirely, replaced by hazel, by green, by a deep, warm brown that makes the parents blink and say, "Huh, I could have sworn they were blue." Nobody tells you this is coming. There's something quietly unsettling about it, if you let yourself sit with it. We expect a face to stay. Eye color feels permanent, like a birthmark, like something the body decides before you take your first breath. We build stories around it. We predict it. We argue over which parent's eyes the baby has, and then the baby goes ahead and changes the answer, slowly, over months, as if the question was never really settled. Because it wasn't. For millions of babies every year, eye color is not a fact. It's a process. It's the body still making up its mind. And the reason why is far stranger than anyone warns you about. Because when you look into a newborn's blue eyes, you're not seeing a color at all. You're seeing light with nowhere to land. Here's the part that sounds wrong until you sit with it long enough for it to become astonishing. There is no blue pigment in a blue eye. None. Not a trace. The human body does not manufacture a blue pigment for the iris. Not in babies. Not in adults. Not in anyone who has ever lived. Blue eyes are not blue the way brown eyes are brown. Brown eyes earn their color honestly. They're packed with melanin, a dense physical pigment layered into the front of the iris, absorbing most wavelengths of light and reflecting back that rich, warm darkness. You're seeing an actual substance, a chemical, something the body made and deposited, like paint on a wall. But blue eyes? The front layer of the iris, the stroma, is nearly empty, translucent. There's almost no pigment there at all. What you're seeing isn't a color the body created. It's a color that light creates, every single time it enters the eye. Here's how it works. The iris has 2 main layers. The back layer, the epithelium, is dark in nearly everyone, a thin sheet of brownish-black tissue that absorbs incoming light like a curtain behind a stage. The front layer, the stroma, is where the story divides. In brown eyes, the stroma is dense with melanin. Light hits the pigment, gets absorbed, and the eye looks dark. In blue eyes, the stroma is nearly clear. And when white light passes through something clear and hits a dark surface behind it, the shorter wavelengths, the blue ones, scatter backward while the longer wavelengths pass straight through. This is exactly what happens in the sky. Sunlight enters the atmosphere. The shorter blue wavelengths scatter off tiny molecules in the air and spray in every direction. The longer reds and oranges pass through. That's why the sky looks blue. There's no blue paint overhead. There's no blue substance floating in the atmosphere. It's pure physics. Light bending through emptiness and landing in your eye as blue. Your baby's iris does the same thing. The same physics. The same trick. And here's what stopped me when I first understood this. It means blue eyes are never really there. They're not a fixed quality. They're not something the body possesses. They're a performance that happens in real time, every time light enters the eye. Change the light, and the blue changes. Walk into a dim room, and the blue deepens. Step into bright sun, and it shifts again. Because the color isn't stored in the tissue. It's being recreated, moment by moment, from the interaction between emptiness and light. And this turns out to be part of a much larger story. Because blue is not just rare in human eyes. Blue is one of the rarest colors in all of nature. Think about the animals you'd call blue. A morpho butterfly in a South American rainforest, its wings flashing electric blue as it catches the sun. A peacock fanning its tail. A blue jay in a backyard tree. They look blue. Brilliantly, unmistakably blue. But almost none of them are blue. The morpho butterfly's wings contain no blue pigment whatsoever. None. What they have are microscopic ridges on their wing scales, layered at exact intervals that cause light to interfere with itself and cancel out every wavelength except blue. Crush those wings, destroy the structure, and the blue vanishes. It was never in the material. It was in the architecture. Blue jays are the same. Their feathers contain no blue pigment. They have tiny air pockets and light-scattering beads inside each feather that perform the same structural trick. Soak a blue jay feather in alcohol, filling those pockets, and the blue disappears. It was light, hitting a structure, producing an illusion. In the entire animal kingdom, almost no creature makes a true blue pigment. There's one known genus of butterfly that does, the olive wings, and almost nothing else. Blue is so chemically difficult for biology to produce that evolution, across hundreds of millions of years, found it easier to build blue from physics than to make it from chemistry. Your baby's eyes are doing the same thing a butterfly's wing does, the same thing a jay's feather does, the same thing the sky does. Not creating blue, performing it. I find something almost sacred in that the most common shade you see when a newborn opens their eyes is not a substance, but a collaboration between an empty iris and the first light that reaches it, a color that exists only in the looking, and it raises a question you don't expect from biology. If blue eyes contain no blue, if a morpho butterfly's wings contain no blue, if a blue jay's feathers contain no blue, then what is blue? Is it a real thing? Or is it something that only exists when light and structure meet at the right angle? Because across the entire living world, from insects to birds to the human face, blue is almost never a thing. It's an event, something that happens, not something that is. Every time you look into a pair of blue eyes, you are watching that event take place. And every time you look away, it stops. And now consider where that baby has just come from. 9 months in total darkness. The womb is lightless. Whatever instructions the baby's DNA carries for eye color, whatever genetic blueprint was laid down at conception, the cells responsible for producing melanin have not had the signal they need. Those cells are called melanocytes, and they are, in a very real sense, light-activated. They respond to light the way film responds to chemical exposure. Without the trigger, the process stalls. So in the womb, the melanocytes sit mostly quiet. Some do their work before birth. This is particularly true for babies with darker skin, whose melanocytes are genetically programmed to produce higher amounts of melanin regardless of light exposure. That's why many babies of African, Asian, or Hispanic descent are born with eyes already brown. Their melanocytes didn't need the light to get started. But for many babies, especially those with European ancestry, the melanocytes in the iris are largely dormant at birth. The stroma is clear, the pigment hasn't arrived, and when those eyes open for the first time and light hits the iris, what scatters back is blue. Not because the baby has blue eyes, because the baby doesn't have any color yet. That blue is a blank page, a default. The iris before the body has finished deciding what it will become. Now, I should be honest about something the internet gets wrong. It is not true that all babies are born with blue eyes. That's a myth. A study at Stanford tracking nearly 200 newborns found that roughly 63% were born with brown eyes. Only about 21% were born with blue. Another 6% arrived with hazel or green. The world's babies are more varied at birth than the old saying suggests. But for those who are born with those pale gray-blue irises, like an overcast morning sky, The clock starts the moment they open their eyes. Over the first weeks and months, as sunlight and indoor light hit the melanocytes for the first time, pigment begins to fill the stroma. Slowly, unevenly, like watercolor bleeding into wet paper. A warm ring might appear around the pupil. A darker edge might form along the outer iris. The blue doesn't just switch off, it recedes. It gives way. It's overwritten by the pigment the body is finally producing. By 6 months, most babies show their likely shade. By a year, most have settled into a color that will stay. But some take up to 3 years, 3 full years, of the body deciding, of light doing its patient, invisible work, writing color into a space that started empty. Think about what that means. The shade someone will look into when they fall in love with you. The color your children will someday try to describe on a government form. The specific hue that people will associate with your face for the rest of your life. That was not fixed at birth. It was not coded in stone. It was built after you arrived, day by day, photon by photon, by the world touching you. We think of our features as given, set, decided before we open our eyes. But this one of the first things anyone notices about a face, gets authored by light. The world has to reach you first, and only then does the body answer. It's as if the iris is the last page the body leaves blank. As if evolution decided that this one detail, the color of a person's gaze, shouldn't be sealed in the dark. It should be finished in the open, shaped by the specific light of the specific place you're born into. A child born in Reykjavik and a child born in Nairobi carry different light from their first day. And in some small way, the iris knows. It responds to its own beginning. There's a tenderness in that I didn't expect to find in biology. The body doesn't arrive complete. It arrives ready to be completed. And the first thing that finishes the job is light. But the question goes deeper than how the color appears. The real question is where the instruction came from. And the answer is one of the strangest stories in human genetics. Think about it this way. Roughly 70 to 80% of the human population alive right now has brown eyes. Brown is the overwhelming default, not just common, dominant. For the vast majority of our species' existence, 200,000 years of modern humans walking this planet, brown eyes were the only eyes. Period. 10,000 years ago, every single human being alive looked out at the world through brown eyes. Every one. Then, somewhere, in one person, a switch flipped. Not a dramatic mutation. Not some grand evolutionary event that scientists would write papers about if they'd witnessed it. Something so small it would have been invisible to anyone alive at the time. A single change in the DNA. One base pair, out of more than 3 billion in the human genome. One letter, and it landed in a gene called HERC2. This gene sits right next to another gene called OCA2, which controls how much melanin gets deposited into the iris. What HERC2 does is act as a kind of control dial for OCA2. The normal version of the dial keeps the neighboring gene turned up, producing melanin, filling the iris, making the eyes brown. The mutation turned the dial down, not off, down, like a dimmer switch on a lamp being nudged from bright to low. OCA2 still functioned. It just produced less melanin, significantly less, so little that the stroma stayed mostly clear. And an iris that had been brown for 200,000 years of unbroken human ancestry went blue. In 2008, a geneticist named Hans Eyberg at the University of Copenhagen published the results of more than a decade of research. His team had been studying blue-eyed people from across the world. Not just Scandinavians, not just Europeans. They tested people in Denmark, then Turkey, then Jordan, populations separated by vast distances, by language, by culture, by millennia of different history. And they all carried the same stretch of DNA around that switch. Not similar DNA, the same. The identical genetic signature, inherited as a single block, passed down through generation after generation so faithfully that the conclusion was inescapable. Over 97% of blue-eyed people tested shared the same haplotype, the same inherited package of genetic markers. That kind of uniformity across populations that diverged thousands of years ago has only one explanation. Every blue-eyed person on Earth shares a single common ancestor. One person, living somewhere near the northwestern edge of the Black Sea between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. Someone whose DNA contained a tiny accident that dimmed the pigment in their children's eyes. And those children survived, and had children of their own, and those children moved. They walked into Eastern Europe. They crossed mountain ranges. They followed rivers and coastlines and the retreating edge of ice. Their descendants ended up in Scandinavia, in Ireland, in the Baltic states, in Central Asia, in pockets of North Africa and the Middle East, in every corner of the world where blue eyes exist today. One person, one letter. And now 8 to 10% of the world's population, somewhere around 600 million people, carry their signature. I want you to sit with that for a moment. If you have blue eyes, or your mother does, or your child does, or the person you love, you are looking at evidence of a specific stranger. A single human being who lived and died 10,000 years ago, whose name is gone, whose face we will never reconstruct, whose life left no trace in any archive or artifact, but whose DNA is still arriving, still being born, still appearing in delivery rooms, still being discovered by parents who look down and say, "Oh, she has blue eyes," without knowing they are looking at a message 10,000 years old. If this is the kind of thing that changes how you see something ordinary, that takes a simple question and cracks it open until the wonder falls out, this is what we do here. Stick around. Subscribe. There's always something under the surface. But the story doesn't end where you'd expect, because for a long time, the image was tidy. Blue eyes came with light skin. Fair features traveled together as a package. The ancestor who carried the first blue eye mutation was imagined as Northern European in appearance, pale-skinned, probably light-haired, looking roughly the way we picture ancient Scandinavians, fair and familiar. Then the DNA arrived, and the picture cracked open. In 2006, 2 skeletons were discovered deep inside a cave system in the Cantabrian Mountains, in the province of Leon, in northern Spain. The cave sat in cold, mountainous terrain, the kind of place where temperatures stay low year-round and organic material decays slowly. The skeletons belonged to 2 men. Both were in their early 30s when they died. They had been buried there about 7,000 years ago, during the Mesolithic, the twilight era of Europe's last hunter-gatherers. The centuries just before farming swept in from the east and changed everything. Scientists spent years trying to extract usable DNA. The work was delicate and frustrating. Several attempts failed. But finally, a team led by Carles Lallueza Fox at the Institute of Evolutionary Biology in Barcelona managed to reconstruct a complete genome from the root of a single wisdom tooth. The better preserved of the 2 skeletons, labeled La Branya 1, gave up its genetic secrets, and what it revealed broke the image wide open. The man had blue eyes. The genetic markers were clear and unmistakable, the same HERC2 variant carried by modern blue-eyed people. He was among the oldest known humans confirmed to have had blue irises. But his skin was dark. Not olive, not Mediterranean, not the ambiguous tan of a person who spent time in the sun. He carried the African versions of the genes that determine light pigmentation in modern Europeans. The genes that code for pale skin, the ones that nearly all Europeans carry today, were absent. His skin was deeply pigmented. Blue eyes, dark skin, in the same face, 7,000 years ago. Louisa Fox said the biggest surprise was not the eyes. It was the skin. Because every artistic reconstruction of Mesolithic Europeans had imagined them as fair, light-skinned. Essentially, modern Northern Europeans dropped into a prehistoric forest. Textbook illustrations showed pale hunter-gatherers with bows and furs, looking like they could walk into a modern Scandinavian village and blend in. And the DNA said no. That image was wrong. It had always been wrong. And La Bragna one was not alone. In 1903, workers improving drainage at Gough's Cave in southwest England stumbled on a skeleton. They called him Cheddar Man. He was roughly 10,000 years old, one of the oldest nearly complete skeletons ever found in Britain. For over a century, he was imagined as a pale, blue-eyed ancient Briton. The earliest Englishman, newspapers called him. Then, in 2018, a team from the Natural History Museum in London extracted and sequenced his ancient DNA. And the same impossible-seeming combination appeared. Dark skin, blue eyes. This happened again and again as ancient DNA research expanded across Europe. The hunter-gatherers who roamed the continent for thousands of years before farming arrived, the people who painted on cave walls and buried their dead with reindeer tooth ornaments, were not pale. They were dark-skinned, and many of them had blue eyes. What this means reshapes the entire timeline. Blue eyes did not arrive as part of a package with fair skin. They came first. Thousands of years before light complexions developed in European populations. Blue eyes were walking around in dark-skinned faces for millennia before anyone who looked like a modern Scandinavian existed. The association we carry in our heads, blue eyes paired with pale skin, is recent. Very recent in evolutionary terms. And a baby born today with blue eyes is, for a brief moment, wearing something closer to the original face. The face that carried blue eyes first. Not the face we imagine when we think of blue eyes, but the actual face, the dark-skinned hunter-gatherer face, the one that looked nothing like the story we built around it. And here is where the science runs into a wall. Because nobody fully knows why blue eyes spread. The mutation itself doesn't appear to offer a clear survival advantage. If anything, brown eyes are better. Brown irises absorb more ultraviolet light. They offer better protection from sun damage. They reduce glare. In the bright, open environments where early humans lived, darker eyes were the more practical option. Blue eyes are more sensitive to light, not less. They scatter more incoming light inside the eye, which can degrade image quality in bright conditions. They're associated with higher rates of certain conditions, including age-related macular degeneration. On paper, the mutation should have been a disadvantage. So why didn't it vanish? There are theories. None of them settled. One is sexual selection. In a population where every single person had brown eyes for thousands of generations, someone with blue eyes would have been extraordinary to look at. Visually arresting in a way we can barely imagine now. Picture it. A camp of hunter-gatherers, everyone dark-eyed, and one child opens their eyes and they're blue. Not a shade anyone has ever seen in a human face. Not brown, not amber. Something the color of a winter sky. In a world before mirrors, before photographs, before any way to know what you looked like except through the reactions of others, that child would have drawn every gaze. Novel, striking, impossible to ignore. And in evolutionary terms, novelty can be powerfully attractive. Some researchers argue that rare eye color gave its carriers a reproductive edge, not because blue eyes were useful, but because they were noticed. People wanted to mate with the person who looked different. And that was enough. Another theory connects blue eyes to light skin as part of a broader adaptation to Northern Europe's weak sunlight. As humans moved further from the equator, where sunlight was scarcer and winters were long and dark, The body needed to let more light through the skin to produce enough vitamin D. Melanin blocks that light. So selection pressure pushed toward reduced melanin everywhere: skin, hair, eyes. Blue eyes, in this reading, weren't selected for. They were pulled along, a side effect of the body learning to survive with less sun. There's even a theory involving seasonal affective disorder. Some research suggests that brown-eyed individuals may be more susceptible to depression triggered by low-light winter conditions. If that's true, then blue-eyed people in Northern Europe's long, dark winters might have been slightly more resistant to the mood collapse that came with months of near darkness. A small psychological edge that translated, over thousands of years, into more surviving children. But none of these explanations fully account for the speed. In parts of Scandinavia and the Baltic, blue eyes went from non-existent to the majority eye color in just a few thousand years. That's fast. In evolutionary terms, that's astonishingly fast. Too fast, some argue, for neutral drift. Too fast for a trait that offers no obvious survival benefit. Something was pushing it, hard, and after decades of research, we still aren't sure what. The honest answer is, we don't know. Hans Eyberg himself put it simply. The mutation, he said, represents neither a positive nor a negative change. It's one of many variations, like hair color, like freckles, like the shape of an earlobes, that nature generates as it shuffles the genetic deck. Whether it caught on because of advantage, attraction, luck, or something nobody has thought of yet, the question remains genuinely, stubbornly open. And there's one more strangeness, one that rarely gets mentioned. For most people, eye color locks into place during childhood. Once the melanocytes have done their work and the stroma is filled or not filled with its final amount of melanin, the color stays. Your eyes at 6 years old are your eyes at 60. But not for everyone. About 10 to 15% of people continue to experience gradual shifts in eye color well into adulthood. A slow lightening, usually. Green fading toward gray. Hazel softening to something paler. Brown warming slightly. A study tracking over 1,300 twins from infancy to adulthood, the Louisville Twin Study, found that while most achieved stable eye color by age 6, a significant minority kept changing through adolescence and beyond. Among identical twins, the eye color stayed closely matched. Among fraternal twins, it sometimes diverged over time, suggesting a genetic component to the tendency to change, not just to the color itself. This means the writing doesn't always stop. For 1 in 7 or 8 people, the iris keeps revising, year by year, decade by decade, responding to something: aging, cumulative light exposure, slow shifts in gene expression, that nobody fully understands. Your eyes, right now, might be subtly different from what they were 10 years ago, and you might never have noticed. So let me take you back to where this started. Someone holds a newborn. They look down into those pale, cloudy blue-gray eyes, and they say it. Oh, she has blue eyes. And now you know what they're really looking at. Not a color. An absence. A stroma so clear that light scatters through it, the way it scatters through the sky, the way it scatters off a butterfly's wing, the way it scatters through every blue thing in nature that was never really blue. A body that hasn't yet been touched by enough light to know what it will become. An iris still waiting for the world to write something into it. And if those eyes stay blue, if the melanocytes never fill the stroma with enough pigment to tip the balance, then what the parents are looking at is even older than their child. They're looking at a single letter of DNA, written by a stranger who lived near the Black Sea 10,000 years ago, in a face with dark skin and light eyes that we wouldn't have recognized as the beginning of anything. A person whose name has been gone for 100 centuries, whose grave, if it still exists, holds bones that no one will ever find. A flicker. An accident. 1 letter out of 3 billion changed in one child. And it didn't disappear. It traveled through thousands of years and millions of bodies, through ice ages and warm spells, through the invention of farming and the building of cities, across mountain ranges and oceans and centuries of ordinary life, through every generation that ever carried it and every child who ever opened their eyes for the first time and scattered light back at someone who loved them. That one letter survived plagues. It survived wars. It survived every ordinary generation where it could have been diluted out, bred out, lost in the noise of 3 billion other letters. It didn't care about empires or borders. It just kept being passed on, parent to child, 10,000 years of it. An unbroken chain of births connecting one anonymous person to a nursery where someone, right now, is holding a baby for the first time. Until it arrived just now. In the face of a baby who knows none of this, who can't focus yet, can't understand yet, can't even fully see the room she's been born into, who is just looking up, into the light, becoming.